I spent 6 years building the department that someone else got promoted to lead. 6 years of 12-hour days, of skipped vacations, of being the person everyone called when a client relationship was falling apart at 9 p.m. each on a Friday. And in the end, none of it mattered, because the person who got my job wasn't the best candidate. He was the CEO's nephew. My name is James. I'm 34 now, and for most of my 20s and early 30s, I worked at a mid-sized logistics and supply chain company called Holloway Freight Solutions, the kind of company most people have never heard of unless they've worked in shipping, but one that moved close to $2 billion in freight annually by the time I left. I started there as an entry-level operations analyst at 24, fresh out of grad school, and over 6 years, I built the company's entire West Coast client relations division essentially from scratch. When I started, that division was 3 people answering phones and putting out fires. By the time I was 30, it was a team of 19, generating close to 40% of the company's total annual revenue through relationships I had personally built with some of the largest retail distributors on the West Coast. I wasn't exaggerating when I say the numbers spoke for themselves. Every quarterly review, every board presentation, my division's growth chart was the one executives pointed to when investors asked what was working. So when the VP of Client Relations, a woman named Patricia who had mentored me for years, announced her retirement, I assumed, reasonably, I thought that the promotion was mine. My direct manager told me as much in private, more than once. James, you've earned this. Just keep doing what you're doing. The company's CEO, a man named Robert Holloway, had built the company from his father's original 3-truck operation in the 1980s into the regional powerhouse it had become. Robert was, by most accounts, a fair boss in the early years I worked there, demanding, sure, but not unreasonable. What I didn't fully appreciate until later was how much his decision-making had started shifting once his sister's son, a 29-year-old named Tyler, joined the company 2 years before Patricia's retirement. Tyler had an MBA from a decent but unremarkable program, a talent for talking confidently in meetings about strategy he clearly hadn't developed himself, and, most importantly, the last name that mattered in that building. He'd bounced between 2 departments in his first 18 months, never quite finding traction, never posting numbers anywhere close to what my division consistently delivered. But he had something I didn't. He golfed with Robert on weekends. He had dinner at the family house on Sundays. He was, in every sense that mattered inside that building's actual power structure, family. When the promotion was announced in a Monday morning meeting, not to me, but to the entire client relations staff, all 19 people I had personally hired and trained, I remember the specific physical sensation of the floor tilting slightly underneath me. Tyler stood up front next to Robert, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, while I sat in the 3rd row trying to arrange my face into something that didn't look like what I actually felt. Afterward, in Robert's office, I asked him directly, as calmly as I could manage, why Tyler had been chosen over me, given the numbers. Robert's answer has stayed with me, word for word, for 5 years now. James, you're a phenomenal operator. Genuinely, one of the best I've worked with. But Tyler needs this experience if he's going to lead this company someday, and frankly, this is the family business. I think you understand. I did understand. That was the problem. I understood completely. What happened over the following 6 months was, in some ways, worse than simply losing the promotion. Tyler, uncertain and defensive in a role he clearly wasn't equipped for, began quietly taking credit for initiatives my team had built long before he arrived, presenting client retention strategies I'd developed as his own ideas in board meetings I wasn't invited to, rebranding processes my team had spent years refining as his new vision for the division. I watched, from a demoted vantage point I hadn't asked for, as the department I'd built from 3 people into the company's biggest revenue driver slowly became someone else's trophy. I stayed for those 6 months longer than I probably should have, partly out of loyalty to the 19 people on my team who still, technically, reported through me on paper even as Tyler took the credit above us, and partly because I genuinely didn't know what came next. I had spent my entire adult career at Holloway. I didn't know who I was outside of it. Then, on a Tuesday in March, I got a call from a headhunter representing a competitor, a smaller, faster-growing logistics startup called Meridian Freight, backed by a private equity firm with serious ambitions to consolidate the regional freight market. They wanted to talk about a chief client officer role. I almost said no. I remember sitting in my car in the Holloway parking lot after that call, staring at the building I'd given 6 years of my life to, genuinely torn about whether leaving would feel like giving up or finally waking up. I took the meeting 3 days later. What I didn't know yet, what nobody in that room could have predicted, was that the conversation I was about to have would set into motion a chain of events that, 5 years later, would put me in a position to make Robert Holloway an offer he genuinely never saw coming. Meridian Freight, when I joined as Chief Client Officer, was a company of about 80 employees compared to Holloway's 400, hungry, underfunded relative to its ambitions, but run by people who actually valued expertise over bloodlines. The CEO, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Elena Vasquez, had built her career the hard way, clawing up through operations roles at 3 different logistics companies before founding Meridian with 2 co-founders and a modest round of seed funding. Elena hired me specifically because of the West Coast retail relationships I'd built at Holloway. Relationships that, crucially, were built on trust in me personally, not in the Holloway name. Within my first year at Meridian, I brought over 4 major client relationships that had worked with me for years, representing close to $11 million in annual freight volume. It wasn't poaching. Exactly. Every client I approached made their own decision based on service quality and existing trust, and I was careful, ethically and legally, to stay well within the bounds of my old non-compete, which had lapsed after 12 months anyway. But there's no question that my arrival accelerated Meridian's growth curve in a way that made industry analysts start paying attention. Over the next 3 years, Meridian grew from 80 employees to over 300. We expanded from West Coast retail logistics into a broader national freight brokerage model, and I was promoted twice, first to Chief Revenue Officer then, when Elena decided to step back from day-to-day operations to focus on the board, to company president, working directly under her as CEO. Meanwhile, back at Holloway, the story was going very differently. I heard fragments through the industry's small, gossipy network of shared vendors and mutual acquaintances. Logistics is a surprisingly tight-knit world once you've been in it a few years. Tyler's tenure as VP of Client Relations had been, by every account, a slow-motion disaster. Without me or my original team's institutional knowledge to lean on, several of my best people had followed me to Meridian within 18 months of my departure. Tyler struggled to retain the client relationships he'd inherited. 2 of Holloway's biggest retail accounts, representing nearly 15% of the company's total revenue, left for competitors within 2 years of Patricia's retirement. Employee turnover in the division I'd built skyrocketed, as the culture I'd spent 6 years cultivating eroded under leadership that prioritized appearances over substance. Robert Holloway, I heard, had grown increasingly frustrated, though loyalty to his sister's son apparently outweighed whatever business instincts had built the company in the first place. Rather than replacing Tyler, Robert doubled down, bringing in expensive outside consultants to modernize the division's strategy. Consultants who, I later learned with a mixture of vindication and genuine sadness, spent 6 figures essentially recreating strategies I'd already built and left behind, badly, without understanding the client relationships that had made them work in the first place. By my 4th year at Meridian, Holloway Freight Solutions was, by every metric that mattered, a company in decline. Revenue had fallen nearly 22% from its peak. 2 rounds of layoffs had gutted departments that once ran efficiently, and most significantly, for reasons I wouldn't fully understand until later, Robert Holloway had taken on substantial debt trying to modernize aging warehouse infrastructure at exactly the wrong economic moment, leaving the company dangerously over-leveraged heading into a freight market downturn. I found out about the depth of Holloway's financial trouble not through industry gossip this time, but through Meridian's own board meetings. The private equity firm backing Meridian had been actively scouting regional acquisition targets to accelerate our national expansion, and Holloway Freight Solutions, struggling, over-leveraged, desperate for a lifeline, had come up as a potential target in a due diligence report I was asked to review. I remember sitting in that boardroom, looking at Holloway's financials laid bare on a slide, numbers I understood better than almost anyone else in that room, because I had helped build the division that used to be the reason those numbers looked good. I felt something complicated, not simple satisfaction, though I won't pretend that wasn't part of it. Mostly, I felt a strange, heavy sense of how much unnecessary damage had been done to employees I still cared about, to a company Robert's father had actually built with real sacrifice, because one man had chosen family loyalty over competence, and had been too proud to correct course once the consequences became obvious. Elena turned to me near the end of that meeting. "James," she said, "you know this company better than anyone in this room. If we move forward on this, I want you leading the acquisition conversation personally." I sat with that for a long moment, thinking about Robert's office 5 years earlier, about the sentence that had ended my career there. "This is the family business. I think you understand." I understood completely once again, but this time for entirely different reasons. "I'll do it," I said, "but I want to be the one who makes the offer directly to Robert in person." I hadn't set foot in Holloway's headquarters in nearly 5 years. Walking into that lobby again felt strange in a way I hadn't fully prepared for. The same reception desk, the same framed photo of Robert's father standing in front of his original 3 trucks in 1987, the same slightly outdated carpet that the company had never gotten around to replacing. Back when I used to joke about it with Patricia over coffee, Robert's assistant, a woman I still remembered from years earlier, did a visible double take when she saw my name on the calendar for the acquisition discussion, though she was professional enough not to comment. Robert himself looked older than 5 years should have accounted for. The specific kind of tired that comes from watching something you built slowly slip through your fingers despite your best efforts to hold on. He shook my hand at the door of his office, and I saw the exact moment recognition and then understanding of why I was actually there crossed his face. "James," he said, gesturing me toward the same chair I used to sit in for quarterly reviews. "I have to admit, when they told me Meridian was sending their president to lead this conversation, I didn't expect it to be you." "I asked to be the one," I said. We spent the better part of 2 hours going through the acquisition terms. Meridian's private equity backers were offering enough to clear Holloway's debt and provide Robert a respectable, if far from spectacular, exit, along with employment protections for the remaining staff, many of whom I still knew by name. It wasn't a hostile takeover in the dramatic sense people imagine. Holloway simply didn't have another realistic path forward, and Robert, to his credit, understood that better than his pride might have suggested 5 years earlier. Near the end of the meeting, Robert set down his pen and looked at me directly. "Can I ask you something honestly, James? Do you feel like this is some kind of payback for Tyler for the promotion?" I thought about that question carefully before answering, because I genuinely wanted to give him an honest response rather than a satisfying one. "No," I said. "If I wanted payback, I could have taken this meeting with a lot less patience than I'm giving you right now. I'm here because Meridian's leadership trusts my judgment on this deal, and because, honestly, I still care what happens to the people in this building who had nothing to do with the decision you made 5 years ago. I'd like to make sure they're protected in this transition. That's the only stake I have in how this goes for you personally." "Personally?" Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Tyler resigned 8 months ago," he said finally. "Took a job at his father-in-law's company. I should have made a change a lot earlier than I did. I think some part of me knew that the day I promoted him over you, and I just didn't want to admit it. I didn't say anything to that. There wasn't really anything left to say that would have changed either of our 5 years." The acquisition closed 4 months later. Meridian Freight absorbed Holloway's client base, retained nearly 90% of the remaining staff, including several people from my original team who'd stayed loyal to the company even as it struggled. And Robert Holloway retired quietly to a lake house 2 hours outside the city, the 3-truck operation. His father built finally folded into something larger than any single family could have carried alone. I didn't take some kind of personal ownership stake in Holloway's old building or install my name on the door, the way a certain kind of revenge story might end. What I did do, in the months following the acquisition, was personally oversee the reorganization of the division I'd once built from 3 people into the company's biggest revenue driver, this time inside Meridian, with the people who'd earned their positions through actual competence, rather than last names. I think about Robert's sentence sometimes, still. This is the family business. I think you understand. I understand now that he was wrong about what actually built that business in the first place. It was never really about family. It was about the people who showed up every day and did the work. The same people who 5 years later I finally got to lead the way I'd always believed they deserved to be led. They stole my promotion. In the end, I didn't need to take their company out of anger. I just needed to keep building, honestly, until the difference between us made itself obvious to everyone.